This is news analysis coming to you live on Politics and Business Television Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for joining us on the program for today. I'm Fatima Abubakar Oibo. The headlines. U.S. lawmakers urge sanctions over religious persecution in Nigeria. Tinubu administration intensifies anti-terrorism efforts with strategic overhaul. Senator Ned Nwoko champions inclusive politics and legislative reform. And on the foreign scene, flight capacity slashed as historic U.S. government shutdown deepens. Details of the stories and more to come shortly after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now the news in full. The United States military has reportedly developed contingency plans for potential airstrikes in Nigeria following President Donald Trump's directive to intervene in defense of Christians facing terrorist attacks. According to the New York Times, the U.S. Africa Command submitted a range of operational proposals categorized as heavy, medium, and light to the Department of Defense, outlining varying levels of engagement in northern Nigeria. The heavy option includes deploying an aircraft carrier strike group to the Gulf of Guinea, while the medium plan involves drone strikes using MQ-9 Reapers and MQ-1 Predators. The light alternative focus on intelligence sharing and joint operations with Nigerian forces targeting Boko Haram and other extremist groups. Military officials say the plans aim to ensure precision and minimize collateral damage amid growing concerns over religiously motivated violence. Meanwhile, Nigeria's federal government is ramping up its fight against terrorism through a multi-pronged approach that blends military operations, socio-economic reforms, and regional diplomacy. Speaking at a press briefing in Abuja, Minister of Solid Minerals Deji Alake emphasized that the current wave of insecurity predates President Bola Tinubu's tenure, but the administration is taking decisive steps to reverse the trend. Alake highlighted recent changes in the leadership of security agencies, first in 2023 and again just days ago, as part of efforts to inject fresh energy in the nation's security architecture. He noted that had such reforms been implemented a decade earlier, Nigeria's security landscape might look very different today. Well, in another development, Senator Ned Nwoko of the APC Delta State has called for a more inclusive political culture in Nigeria, urging leaders to prioritize national development over exclusivity. In an interview with the news agency of Nigeria, he emphasized that only Nigerian leaders can shape the country's future, advocating for governance that delivers justice, equity, and progress for all citizens, especially those in Delta North. Reflecting on his two-year tenure in the state, Nwoko highlighted his sponsorship of 34 transformative bills aimed at youth empowerment, economic reform, and institutional strengthening. Among them are proposals for the creation of Anioma State, rent regulation, and the Cashless Asset Acquisition Act, which mandates traceable transactions for high-value assets. He reaffirmed his commitment to people-centered legislation that drives sustainable development across Nigeria. You're watching news analysis right here on Politics and Business Television Abuja. Still to come, TUC wants proposed petrol import duty could deepen economic hardship. Details of this headline and more news content after a quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back. And now let's move on to business matters. The president of the Trade Union Congress (TUC), Festus Osifo, has raised alarm over the federal government's proposed 15% import duty on premium motor spirit, popularly known as petrol, warning it could lead to a spike in pump prices and worsening living conditions for Nigerians. Speaking on a televised interview, Osifo questioned the rationale behind imposing such a tax when local refineries remain largely inactive, noting that Nigeria still imports about 70% of its petrol needs. He further pointed out that the Dangote refinery operates within a free trade zone and already enjoys duty waivers, meaning the proposed levy would disproportionately affect other importers who would pass the cost to consumers. Osifo urged the government to clarify the scope of the policy, stressing that without clear guidelines, it risks creating confusion and placing additional financial strain on ordinary citizens. And on the foreign scene, the U.S. government shutdown has entered record-breaking territory, prompting federal officials to announce a 10% reduction in flight capacity across 40 major air traffic zones starting Friday. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy confirmed the move at a White House briefing, warning that airports in Atlanta, Dallas, Los Angeles, and New York City could be among the hardest hit. The Federal Aviation Administration says the cuts target high-traffic markets to manage staffing shortfalls as thousands of aviation workers continue without pay, with over 1.4 million federal employees either furloughed or working unpaid. Absenteeism among air traffic controllers and TSA officers is rising, threatening to disrupt travel nationwide. The which began after Congress failed to pass a funding bill by September 30, has now surpassed the 35-day record set during President Trump's first term. Officials fear worsening delays and mounting pressures on critical infrastructure if the impasse continues. And now for sport news, let's join Aroko Tom.
Good day, I'm Aroko Tom with your P&B Sports Update. Now let's dive into the Champions League roundup. Pafos stunned Villarreal 1-0 in Cyprus. Derek Lucasen heading home the winner to give Cyprus side their first ever league phase victory. Karabakh held Chelsea to a 2-2 draw in Baku. Chelsea Esteval opened the scoring and Alejandro Garnacho rescued a late equalizer, but Karabakh twice fell back to earn a point. Manchester City ran out 4-1 winner over Borussia Dortmund at the Etihad. Phil Foden grabbed a brace and Ryan also scored, and Ryan Cherky added a late fourth as City took control of the game. Newcastle beat Athletic Club 2-0 at St. James Park. Dan Bond's sublime header opened the scoring and Drolton added a second to secure the win and move the Magpies over the group. That's the Champions League action from last night. I'm Aroko Tom. Stay with P&B Sports for more full match analysis and reactions. Also follow us on our social media pages. Thank you.
Welcome back and welcome to our focus today on news analysis right here on Politics and Business Television, the program where we separate emotion from evidence and expose the politics behind every headline. Well, there's a new diplomatic storm brewing, and this time the United States House of Representatives is at the center of it. In a move that has sparked outrage across Nigeria, the U.S. Congress has urged its Department of State and Treasury to impose targeted sanctions on members of the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association and Miyetti Allah Kautal Hori, accusing them of violating religious freedom in Nigeria. The move, according to Washington, is part of a broader push to protect persecuted minorities. But here in Nigeria, many see it as an insult to our sovereignty and a dangerous misrepresentation of our internal security challenges. Across social media, the reactions are explosive. One user on X wrote, and I quote, "How did internal conflicts suddenly become an American human rights issue?" Another fired back, "Maybe if our leaders protected Nigerians better, foreigners wouldn't need to aim on who controls the oil." Meanwhile, government insiders are already describing the development as foreign interference disguised as morality. They warn that sanctions on any local group, no matter how controversial, could escalate tensions, fuel regional resentment, and deepen Nigeria's religious polarization. Well, joining me now to unpack this very development is Comrade Bitako Abubakar Umar. He's a spokesperson of the Rebuild Arewa Initiative for Development, RAID, an educationist, public affairs analyst, and politician known for his fearless takes on issues of national unity and governance. He's joining us live in the studio. Comrade Bitako, welcome to the program.
Good afternoon, Nigerians.
Good afternoon. Okay, comrade, the U.S. House of Representatives say it wants to sanction Miyetti Allah for religious persecution. Many Nigerians see this as a distortion of our internal issues. How do you interpret this move? Genuine concern or geopolitical manipulation?
Well, whatever and whichever way one could look at it, I think we are the architecture of our problem.
Okay.
Nigerian government is the architecture of this problem. I keep on saying this. Supposing our house is in order, you wouldn't have seen this kind of interference from USA or whatever international community group that might be. You understand?
Yes, I do.
Over years, I keep on saying this. Our leaders in this country, when or after assuming office, they totally disconnect themselves from the constitutional duties. What is the primary role of government? The primary and constitutional role of a government is one, the protection of lives and properties of the citizens. Second, provision of welfare services to the citizens. But over years and decades in Nigeria, we see that wider disconnect between the government and the subject and its subjects or the citizens. You will see a very huge gap of distrust. They are there eating fat on the taxes, the sweat of the citizens. In Nigeria is what Nigerian government, Nigerian Senate, and the Nigerian House of Representatives ought to have done earlier than now. Earlier than now. Of course, the US government intervention may help matters, but constitutionally, Nigeria is a sovereign nation. By saying Nigeria is a sovereign nation, we are a nation where we have the constitutional power backed by international laws to govern ourselves without a kind of intervention or usurpation by another government of another country. That is what we mean by sovereignty. But because of the kind of lackadaisical attitudes of the successive government of this country, that has resulted to the breakdown of laws and others, to irregularities in the way we conduct ourselves in this country. Today, you hear of American intervention or military intervention in this
which have been accused of bias. Do you think Nigeria has done enough to challenge these foreign narratives?
Well, that's what I've said. Nigeria government have not done much. Nigeria government have not done much. Our security issue of Metasine in Kano, we had issue of Metasine in Gombe, and we have issue of Metasine in the then Gongola, where I come from, far back 1984. Lives were killed by some sectional individuals who were called Metasine. Panel of inquiries by government and security agencies were put in place. Reports were submitted, but to no avail. Actions were not taken. Stop at that. Take another second instance. The Zangon Kataf communal clash during IBB. The Wukari TV, Fulani, Jukun, etc. in the present day Taraba happened. It has been a recurring issue. It happened 2003. Mambila ethnic group versus the Fulanis. These communal clashes, tribal clashes, and so many other crises, farmers-headed conflicts, proliferated farmers-headed clashes in Nigeria, so rampant. We have the security agencies such as the Nigerian Police Force, the military, the DSS, the NIA, name them. Some arrests from time to time are made. But what are the judgments? These culprits, were they prosecuted? Were they hanged to death? Were they put life imprisonment? What happened at the end of the day? Hearkening to the calls of action to that effect, we wouldn't be where we are. We should blame ourselves. We should not be blaming Americans. Of course they are coming. Of course they will take advantage of their coming. They will not just come and waste their drones, waste their ammunition for wasting sake. They must profit to that extent.
Well, some people have come online to even say that the same resources that people are claiming that they want to protect.
You see, I keep on saying, even in our press conference yesterday, the corruption, the massive looting of our treasury in Nigeria shouldn't be so. These monies, political office holders and public office holders are looting. They are money budgeted to provide social services to the citizens. Our anti-graft agencies should be up and doing. Retrieve this money. Make arrest to that effect. Make prosecution to that effect. It is high time for this in this country. We should have what the Frenchmen call peine de mort. That is death by hanging for public office holders. Today, Bitako, if I'm a public office holder, if I embezzle public fund, I should be arrested, executed, like the way the Chinese government are doing. That policy has put China in place and advanced China as one of the most advanced in economy and in technology in the contemporary universe today.
Speaking of China, China has already warned against interference in Nigeria's internal affairs. Does this US move prove to Beijing's point that Western powers are now using religion as a weapon to control African nations?
Of course, certainly, a philosopher said, religion is the opium of the masses. People who are religious become highly intoxicated by their religious belief. You understand? And because of that, international communities as well as individuals take advantage of that weaknesses. You understand? Take advantages to satisfy their personal and selfish interest. The coming out of the Benji or the Chinese government to either warn or advise US government on its interference into Nigeria internal problem has a political undertone, because China has huge investment in Nigeria. US in its own part, not that the US doesn't have investment, but the US want to take grip of the political space and the economic space of Nigeria. Not only, don't forget that US has imposed itself as a superpower, as the police of the universe. That we cannot take it away from them at the moment. But we keep on questioning ourselves as a nation, and a sovereign nation of that matter, with leaders who are learned, who are not analog. We should defend ourselves, defend our people, defend our operational justice and collective punishments. It is unfair for a kind of collective punishments. But as it is for decades, for a decade now, there is that stigmatization of Fulanis. Take it or leave it. Fulanis have been stigmatized. You know why? Because record has shown they are the ones that, because of the fact that they are naturally known to be cattle rearers, we see proliferations of clashes between farmers and herders. Who are these herders? The herders are predominantly the Fulanis. So because of that, there's already that existence of stigmatization. And now, coupled with the prevalent terrorism in Nigeria, banditry, kidnapping in not western part of Nigeria, as well as the northeastern region where I come from. Records have shown that they are mostly involved. Do you know why? They are vulnerable because most of them are not enlightened. Most of them are not educated. And these bandits or the terrorist group recruits the illiterates, the ignorant ones in our society, to engage them in these nefarious activities. So, it will be very unfortunate for collective punishment. But based on these evidences I've mentioned, and many more others that could be obtainable, you see, they tend to fall victims of this collective punishment. That is just it. Even though it's unfortunate.
Quite unfortunate, I must say. But looking at President Tinubu's silence so far, do you think this government should respond more forcefully to Washington, or would confrontation with the US be a diplomatic mistake?
Till this day and this moment, I have been tracking the activities as a leader of a pressure group, as a stakeholder in the polity and equation of northern Nigeria. I have been tracking all the utterances, but I have not come across any pronouncement, any public address from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs under the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Yusuf Tugga. I've not heard that. Neither has there been an official statement from Nigerian government. All statements are side by side. But I advise their silence should not be complacency. Their silence should be that kind of silence that is putting something meaningful, something concrete, something that will be a result-oriented silence at the end of the day. There should be a kind of proper, positive, excellent, a kind of diplomatic engagement between Nigerian government and that of the American government at the end of the day that will calm down, quell the present predicament. This is what we expect as citizens of this nation. We are advising them, and we are still advising them that time has come. If the citizens, if they themselves cannot use their conscience as a kind of platform of judgment, self-judgment, if they cannot use their conscience, if they cannot use our advices or our advice as pressure groups, now I think the action of the US government will now not only put the citizens, but the government in place on their own toes to do the needful.
Finally, comrade, before I let you go, what message would you send to the US Congress right now on behalf of ordinary Nigerians who feel targeted and misrepresented?
Well, the first message I will give, just like we issued out yesterday, that US government should not adhere. They are too big enough to work on hearsay. They are too big enough to work on side information. We expect them to establish that team of bilateral engagement. The team should be raised to come down to Nigeria. It's resulting. And because of the political management and regulating the kind of informations, fake informations, so predominant in our society that will result to hate speech, to hatred, and whatever negative, and regulating the kind of informations, fake informations, so predominant in our society that will result to hate speech, to hatred, and whatever negative you could see it. Here we are finding ourselves. If at the end of the day, Americans come in, it is not only the victims or the terrorists that will fall victim. The innocent one can fall victim. We cannot access our farmland anymore. We cannot rear our animals anymore. That will affect the economy of our dear country, Nigeria. You understand? So, American government should should form a team to come to Nigeria and engage Nigerian government properly and thoroughly and get first-hand information before taking any other action. Thank you.
Comrade Bitako Abubakar Umar, a spokesperson of the Rebuild Ariwa Initiative for Development, RAID. Thank you for joining us on the program live in the studio. I must say, we've been hearing your name, and I think I don't know if our viewers have seen you before, maybe live in the studio. But thank you so much for joining me live in the studio. And thank you for your insight, your forthright insight. Well, at the heart of the issue lies a painful truth. Nigeria's image abroad is being shaped by those who shout the loudest and not always those who tell the truth. One powerful nation is being shaped by those who shout the loudest and not always those who tell the truth. When powerful nations start threatening sanctions based on one-sided stories, it's not just about religion, it's about control, leverage, and narrative dominance. Nigeria must not remain silent. If we don't define our story, others will define it for us and weaponize it against us. As the US flexes its moral muscle and China positions itself as Nigeria's defender, one question echoes louder than ever. Who really speaks for Nigeria and whose agenda are they serving? This has been our focus today on Politics and Business Television. Thank you for staying with us. And remember, national sovereignty isn't declared, it's defended. And that wraps up today's program, but before we go, the headlines again. U.S. lawmakers urge sanctions over religious persecution in Nigeria. Tinubu administration intensifies anti-terrorism efforts with strategic overhaul. Senator Ned Nwoko champions inclusive politics and legislative reform. On the foreign scene, flight capacity slashed as historic U.S. government shutdown deepens. For more updates and in-depth analysis, follow Politics and Business TV.English on YouTube and Facebook. Connect with us on Instagram at PMBTV_English and TikTok at PMBTV_ENG. Remember to subscribe and stay informed. From me, Fatima Abubakar Oyibo, it's bye for now.